attendance today. Okay, welcome to La Lucha. We were hoping to have some words from Martha McDevitt-Pugh, our international chair. She's not here yet, so I'm just going to go ahead, and if Martha arrives, we'll let her step in. So, hi everybody. I hope you all had a relaxing summer and you're ready to get to work again. We have a very busy period ahead of us getting ready for the most important election of our lives again, and that will probably be true of all US elections from now on. There's a lot at stake, and if you're paying any attention at all to the news, you know that we're going to be fighting an uphill battle for the next 14 months. Republicans are viciously attacking our democratic, with a small d, institutions from all sides, and they are counting on Americans to be blissfully unaware of their nefariousness. And that's why it's so important to hear from people like our guest today. Doug Jones began his career in 1979 as staff counsel to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee for Senator Howell Heflin of Alabama. Following his stint in Washington, Senator Jones served as a assistant United States attorney. He left government service in 1984 and was in the private practice of law in Birmingham, Alabama, until President Bill Clinton nominated him to the position of United States Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama. His nomination was confirmed by the Senate in November 1997, and he served as U.S. Attorney until June 2001. While serving in that position, Senator Jones successfully prosecuted 2 of the 4 men responsible for the 1963 bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church that killed 4 young girls, finally bringing full justice and closure to nearly 40 years after the attack. Along with taking on the KKK, he indicted domestic terrorist Eric Rudolph and prosecuted other criminals who sought to use fear, hatred, and violence to inhibit the rights of others. In 2017, Doug Jones shocked the political establishment by winning a special election to fill a U.S. Senate seat in Alabama, the first Democrat to do so in the state in 25 years. As a member of the Banking and Housing Committee, the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, the Armed Services Committee, the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, and the Committee on Aging, he quickly built a reputation as a well-regarded and effective legislator. He passed more than 24 bipartisan bills into law in just 3 years, including legislation to end the military widows tax, provide permanent funding for historically Black colleges and universities, shed light on civil rights era cold cases, and expand access to broadband in rural communities. He was also one of the principal architects of the anti-money laundering legislation passed by Congress as part of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2020. And Senator Jones is currently with the DC legal firm Arent Fox Schiff, where he advises clients in the national security, government enforcement, and white-collar government relations and investigation sectors. Senator Jones has promised to leave plenty of time for questions, so please save your questions until he's done speaking and use the DA method of typing * hand up in the chat box. Catherine and I will keep track so that we can take your questions in order. And without further ado, Senator Doug Jones, welcome to La Lucha.
Thank you, Annie. Thanks so much. I first of all need to once again apologize for being a no-show a couple of weeks. For those of you who could make it, my wife and I both were so looking forward to being with you guys. It was our first trip to Barcelona, our first trip to Spain. We had an incredible time, but there were a couple of interesting bumps in the road that I didn't go into great detail on. But what happened that day, we had a couple that was traveling with us. And that morning, he had not been feeling very well and woke up and tested positive for COVID. And that sent us into a kind of a tailspin for a little bit. And we were pretty distracted the entire day trying to figure out what was going on. We probably could not have come anyway, but quite candidly, we got so distracted. It was later where I realized, oh my God, it just got past us. So I do apologize, but I have, Louise has made me promise to tell you, we're going to be back. We're going to come back. We love Barcelona. We loved a few days in Madrid. So it's a time that we'll head back. But I wanted to make sure that we at least had a chance to meet virtually and talk a little bit about what was going on. It's important to keep folks apprised of what I'm doing, of what's going on in the country as best I can tell. It's an interesting and somewhat scary time that we've got over here because, as was said, this coming election in 24 will it could actually be the make or break election for democracy as we know it. I mean, every election is always the most important election because it's the next one and it sets the stage. But I don't know if we've come across an election like this one, in which purely the future of our republic as we know it, the future of democracy is at stake. The timing, though, guys, and you may or may not have seen this come across your news feeds, but the timing for our visit today is especially important because just about 2 hours ago, we got the news that the U.S. Supreme Court has rejected the state of Alabama's bid to put a halt to the court case here that is going to redo our congressional districts. Yeah, to give you a little bit of history of that, back a few years ago after the census, the state of Alabama redrew lines. We had several folks that challenged that and said it was improper because it was not giving a second district to minority voters to give them an opportunity to elect a member of Congress of their choice. Alabama has 7 members of Congress. 8 are Republicans. We have 1 Democrat in a very gerrymandered district in which so many Black voters are packed into that one district. But in the 10 years between 2010 and 2020, the population has spread out a little bit and the Black population in Alabama grew. And so by all rights, by all measures, we should have a second congressional district that at least gives the minority community the opportunity to elect someone of their choosing. But that's not what the Alabama legislature drew. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court at the time, well, the local courts ruled it unconstitutional and a violation of the Voting Rights Act. The Supreme Court kept the old districts in line because it was very close to the election. This past summer, however, a conservative Supreme Court in a decision that probably shocked America more than my election in 2017, decided that the Voting Rights Act still has application. It still means something, and that Republicans cannot gerrymander along racial lines, which is exactly what they did. So the case came back. And that case was so important, folks, not just for Alabama. There are districts in Louisiana and in Georgia. There's likely to be new challenges in Mississippi and South Carolina that could really change the face of the South. I don't have all the statistics in front of me, but our region is so underrepresented in Congress and in state legislatures. It's just stunning. I mean, Alabama is a good example. In the 2018 elections, we had about 42% of the people voted for Democrats in this state, but we only had about 25% of the state legislature. That's the problem that we're running into across the South. So this case has really given some energy to people, and it went back to that same three judge panel. Our legislature took the Supreme Court decision from last summer, and basically thumbed their nose at the Supreme Court, thumbed their nose at the federal courts, and said, "We're gonna make it worse." And they drew districts that were even worse than the ones that we've got now. They essentially almost did away with the one district that we've got. It was an affront to the judiciary, and the 3-judge panel said that as much, that they just ignored the rulings and flouted everything in an effort to try to get back to the Supreme Court. Well, when the court came down and said, we're gonna draw new districts, you haven't done it, Alabama, we're gonna do it, which is typical, by the way, for Alabama. Missouri is the show me state. Alabama is the make me state. We always have to have the federal courts intervene on everything. So they did on this one. The state appealed the 200-page judgment the other day and asked that they keep the old ones in place again. And today the Supreme Court says no. They slapped down Alabama Republicans. They slapped down the Attorney General's office. And it's a good day for democracy. Despite the concerns that we all have about our U.S. Supreme Court right now, this was a good day today. And it is going to have, I think, dramatic effects, because for so long, and I'm not saying anything today that I haven't said for a long time, Democratic Party folks ignored the South for so long and let us get into this point. Now we've got an opportunity to change the face of elections going forward, to win back the House, to keep the Senate by making these changes. It's going to be a slow roll, but it's a really good day. That was a long-winded way of telling you I am just really happy today about what's going on. Okay. Give you a little bit of an update on a number of things. We're still struggling to get legs for the president, even though I think that this president, who I've known for 40 years, has done an absolutely remarkable job. You see polling here, polling there, because people, look, let's be candid, people are concerned about his age. And my response to that is, look, he's earned a second term. He has done that by having historic legislation that is bipartisan in many respects. When you're talking about the infrastructure bill, the PAC Act to help veterans, the CHIPS Act to bring manufacturing, particularly in the chip sector, back to the United States. He's earned that right in a bipartisan way, but he's also said that if he can't get bipartisan support, we're going to do some things anyway, which is exactly what he has done. This president has addressed the issues of climate change more than any administration in history. It is an existential threat that we have right now, and he's doing everything he can to address that. We're lowering the cost of prescription drugs for seniors. We're building that infrastructure and trying to do it and building an economy, as he says, from the ground up and the middle out. That's what we're trying to do today. Today, you've got the president of the United States. I haven't seen the news lately, so I don't know if he's made it yet. But today, you've got the president of the United States who is going to join a union picket line in Detroit. That's a big deal. That is a huge deal, because we've lost so many of rank and file members, particularly in the South, on all of these social issues. We're beginning to deliver this message that Democrats we've never changed. It's just that our message has not always gotten through, but we're there for people. We want to make sure that they have a living wage. We want to make sure that America is not just for the wealthiest corporations or the wealthiest individuals in this country, but we're open. We're becoming more diverse every day. We're the party of equality. We're the party of inclusion. We're the party of justice. You know, one of the things that I am proudest of that I've been able to do in the last couple of years, and that is a year or so ago, I was able to, at the president's request, help him get the first African-American female confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to be a force on that court. She is absolutely incredible. Louise and I had the honor, as soon as we got back from Spain, we had the next Friday was the 60th anniversary of the church bombing that Annie referred to a little earlier. And the main speaker at the memorial was Justice Jackson. And she was absolutely remarkable. You should go, if you get a chance and you want to see it, go to the 16th Street Baptist Church YouTube, and you can see a recording of the entire ceremony. Now, I will tell you, for those of you who haven't been to 16th Street or other churches similar in the South, you need to just scroll through the first 2 hours of it to get to the latter part, 2 hours and 13 minutes, right before Justice Jackson speaks. And her words were so powerful, because she said, I came here to commemorate and to mourn, but to also celebrate and to warn Alabama and America that we're backsliding to some extent on issues of race and equality. We're backsliding when people want to change history and talk about how slavery had some good aspects of it that taught people trade skills or some crap like that. We're backsliding with political rhetoric that causes violence. That happened in Alabama in the Jim Crow era when I was growing up. And it's happening here today with so many of our MAGA friends who are talking about things that are causing people to commit violence. It's really remarkable. I hope you will take a few moments to go take a look at it, because she did an incredible job. She took a tour of the South. This was not a state visit. This was a for memorial. But going through and listening to her and seeing her, and that's what I said in my introduction, that I've never had a chance to introduce anyone who could literally walk up the steps of that church to the pulpit and never say a word and represent to America the hopes, the dreams, the possibilities that we are in this country, that is the ideal of America. That's what she represents. That's what I think we have to kind of continue to go forward. And look, there's a lot of great things happening. Don't believe these silly polls that you're seeing coming across. They're outliers. They're polls that really don't mean nothing. Not to say that this is not going to be a difficult election. It is. We have become so polarized in this country now that every election comes down to a handful of states and a handful of people. And so we are fighting we're continuing to fight, as the president says, for the soul of America, but in a handful of states. But everything, the wind is at our back. If you look at what's happened over the last 12 to 24 months in this country, including the midterms of 2022, Democrats are outperforming Republicans in every single election. It seems like every time there's something going on, Democrats are outperforming Republicans. They're winning special elections. They're winning ballot initiatives. But just, and there's a reason for that. It's because of what our Democrats in Congress are doing. It's because of what the president is doing. It's because we have policies that affect everyday Americans, affect the globe. It's because this president has created over 13 million jobs in almost 3 years. It is because that he has now become and rallied our friends around the world to fight for democracy and stand up to dictators like Vladimir Putin and others and fight the war in Ukraine. It's because he's standing tall to try to help and deal with the climate change issues. It's because he has put people on the court. This president has put more African-American women on the Court of Appeals than all his predecessors combined, because the courts need to reflect what America looks like and their philosophies as well as the American people do. So all of those things, we do have the wind in our back. I really believe that as we go forward into 2024, so many people are going to start listening to those messages. They're going to understand what this president is doing, what he will continue to do in the next 4 years after he is reelected. We've got tough races in the U.S. Senate. This is going to be a very tough cycle for us because a number of the senators who are Democrats who are up for reelection are in states that President Trump won in 2020 and President Biden did not. You've got a tough race in Ohio with Sherrod Brown. You're going to have a tough race in Montana with my buddy Jon Tester. I don't know what Senator Manchin is going to do. He's got a tough race if he elects to run again in West Virginia. I think he can win that race. I've told him that. I think that following some, I don't know what to say about this no labels group other than it's a fool's errand. I hope he will not do that and will run for reelection. Tammy Baldwin will have a tough race in Wisconsin. Bob Casey in Pennsylvania. And so it's going to be tough to hold that Senate, but I think we can do it because we've got the better candidates. I think we've got a really good shot of retaking the House. my Lord, that's just a clown show right now. I mean, that's just the only way to put what's going on. It is a clown show. Kevin McCarthy is not a leader. He is damn sure no Nancy Pelosi in terms of trying to lead not just his caucus, but the entire House of Representatives. We're expecting a government shutdown because they cannot get it together. You've got that Freedom Caucus that is so crazy that they don't care. They don't care that families will be at stake. They don't care what it does to the economy of the United States with a government shutdown. All they care about is their extremist views. We've got a U.S. senator from Alabama right now that doesn't care about our nation's security in the military, who is literally blocking promotions of generals and flag officers. Now there's over 300 of our military officers who are due promotions that can't get them because of one senator's ability to stop the process, not block them. Everybody thinks that this is a blockade. It's not a block, but he can slow down the process such that they just can't get done without shutting down the entire Senate for a year. That's just the way things. So what we're seeing is a Democratic Party that's fighting for all Americans and a Republican Party that's just fighting to stay in control through voter suppression, through gerrymandering, through things and voter subversion across this country. You only have to look at what happened in the Texas legislature when it's strictly across partisan lines. They voted not to impeach the attorney general who's been under indictment for 5 years now. Look, we won a special election for a Supreme Court decision in Wisconsin, but immediately the Republican-controlled legislature has moved to impeach her before she's really even gotten on the bench good, because it flips the balance of power on that court. That's what we're fighting against. We are fighting for people, and they're fighting for power, and that's all it is. But I think that message will resonate. I'm going to be out there again. I traveled the country in 2022. I'm going to do it again in 2024 for my old friend Joe Biden and for all of my colleagues. I'm still bullish on 2024. I don't give a damn what the polls say. I am very bullish on 2024 for Democrats across the board because right is on our side. We have the right side of history, and the other folks don't. So I've talked long enough. I've just rattled off a whole bunch of stuff here. And I'm happy now to just talk to you and try to answer questions. And if I can't answer them, I'll try to find an answer for you and get back to you. So thank you very much for having me. And again, I wish I had been there in person, but stay tuned. We'll make it happen one day. So thanks.
Thank you so much. That's a lot of really good information and pep talks. So Jim Rissero has our first question.
Hi, Senator. I think the last time we met was in Paris, you energized us, and we went out and we did a good job. And
you did. It's good to see you again.
Senator, I'm curious about how Tommy Tuberville is being received in Georgia. I mean, in Alabama. Is that kind of a behavior acceptable to Alabama voters?
Look, well, first of all, I'm not sure. He really lives in Florida. Just saying, he's really Florida.
Yes, we know that.
He doesn't live in Alabama. So, and he really doesn't show up too much. I mean, just like in the campaign, he only goes to his little silos and never gets really out very much. And look, we're a conservative state, and I think in a lot of quarters, it's probably well received. But I also think that it's received better in those quarters because people don't understand the ramifications of it. I don't think that people understand. They just hear that he's doing this to protest wokeism or some crap like that, and that it's an abortion-related issue, and doesn't really understand that this is not that much of a change. It was the fact that the Supreme Court changed the laws, and they really not drilled down to understand how it's affecting national security, how it's affecting military morale at a time when we really the morale and the ability to recruit people to our military is really low. So it's a question of education, and I think folks are beginning to see that now more and more. everywhere I go in the state, and when I try to get outside the Democratic comfort zone, people just shake their heads about it because they don't get it. They don't understand it. They really don't agree with it. The problem that we got, Jim, quite frankly, is that in Alabama and across the country, people are too, they just won't stand up and speak out. They just won't stand up to it. It's a Republican, they vote Republican, and so they don't like to be criticized. They don't want to be critical. And they don't understand how important it is and how much they can affect the outcome. So we're trying to do things, been working with Vote Vets and some other groups to try to get people to understand. We had a little bit of a crack the other day. I think he'll have to give. At some point, he's going to have to give, and it will be an issue in his reelection if he decides to run for reelection. And there's a question about that. But you can, I think the momentum is growing against him, even in a state like Alabama. We have a lot of military in this state. We have a lot of military assets. We have a lot of veterans in this state, and they're not happy. They are beginning to more and more to voice their opinion. So stay tuned. We'll see. We've got to build our Democratic Party in Alabama to try to get to make sure he's a one-term senator.
Thank you. Mary Jo has the next question.
Hi, Senator. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us. So as you well laid out, every vote is going to count in this upcoming election. And you may or may not know that overseas voters were the margin of victory in Georgia and Arizona in the last election. Overseas voters who vote overwhelmingly Democratic. And you mentioned that the Democratic Party has lost the rank and file union members, but they never paid any attention at all to overseas voters. And there's 9 million of us.
Right.
And, you know, understandably in some ways, because there's a very low voting participation. But I'd like to suggest that some of the low voting participation is because people are afraid to vote, because once they find out that they're supposed to file their taxes, even though they're filing taxes where they live, they're afraid. They're afraid of the IRS coming after them. Or they do file it and are just pissed off at the overwhelming penalties and punitive and craziness of the tax laws and how they treat overseas Americans. And these have compounded over the years, these laws that are designed to capture high net worth individuals, resident in the United States, by the way, are catching up middle-class Americans overseas. And it's unbelievably onerous and problematic, and it affects voting. And so I was wondering if you would be willing to meet with myself and the Taxation Task Force chair while we're in Washington, D.C. the week after Thanksgiving recess, to see how we can begin to get some of these onerous taxation issues off the place, so that we can get more voters, and so voters aren't so afraid to vote.
Sure. If I'm in DC, I'm happy to meet. I'm not sure what the schedule is. I am half time with the law firm in DC. I am half time with the Center for American Progress as a fellow. I am full time campaigning for somebody or somehow, some way. So, but stay in touch, Annie, and they've got all my information at the law firm. And if I am around or I can get up there, I'm happy to try to meet, because these were discussions I did have when I came over a couple of times when I was in the Senate. Went back and really thought we could make a little progress, but then COVID hit and everything got topsy-turvy about that. But it is, I agree with you. It's a system that is not fair and needs to be addressed if at all possible. But so I'm happy to meet. Let's just see if we can do it. And if not, maybe we can just have another Zoom at some point.
That would be awesome. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Oliver, now you're up.
Forgot the mute thing. Hey, Senator, first of all, it's a huge honor to meet you. I'm a giant fan. I also have been a huge fan of Joe Biden since I was a kid in 2008. Whether in private or on my little podcast, or when massively starstruck in front of senators that I would have voted for if I was in their states, try to always assume that whenever there's a situation that Joe Biden thinks something and I think something else, that I'm wrong. And usually that bears out correctly. But if there's one decision the president's made that I've been unsure of, and I continue to be, and my apologies if this question puts you in an awkward position, and feel free to like not answer it if it does. But before, after the election, before cabinet people were suggested or nominated, I both believe that he would and should pick you to be the attorney general. And I know Merrick Garland's a good guy, and I don't mean to, I certainly don't want you to put you in the position of criticizing him, but I'm curious what the last couple of years might have looked like in terms of some of the big decisions that have been made at Justice had you been there instead.
Well, I appreciate the question and the comment.
Sorry.
No, look, it is, I hear the question a lot. I defer answering more, as you can probably imagine.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is, quite frankly, it's very difficult to say what decisions might have been different. I'm not privy to the information that he has had. And I've been a supporter of the attorney general. I still am. It's a different style. He was a judge. He's probably a little more cautious. No, he's probably a lot more cautious. But that's just his nature and the style. I will say this, Merrick Garland's reputation for honesty, integrity, and professionalism is unmatched. And I think he has lived up to that. I think he is still living up to that in the face of criticism. And he's been criticized by both the right and the left. So he must be doing a fair amount right. That's what I keep telling folks. It has been a very, very difficult tenure. For him, it would have been a very difficult tenure for any attorney general under the circumstances post January 6th, post troubles within the president's family, special counsels out there, and then people beginning to call for your impeachment before you get even sworn in. So I have been one to basically say it's steady as she goes at the Department of Justice. One thing I can tell you, and I like to think that I would have done this too had I been the attorney general. If I didn't think I could, I wouldn't have even had my name considered. But I think he has rebuilt the confidence that rank and file members of the Department of Justice have had. And that's been really important. He's been very supportive of the department. He's been very supportive of the men and the women that run the department. And that was very important because they did not have that under Donald Trump. They will not have that if Donald Trump is reelected. And so at every turn, I talk more about the department and ongoing efforts to maintain professionalism and the rule of law. And I think he's done a really good job on that. So that's a long way of not answering your question.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. Sorry, I was probably kind of a slightly off question.
It's okay. I get it, and I understand it. I hear it a fair amount. So
That's a good thing to hear then. Sounds like you have a lot of support. Brian, your question is next.
Sorry, I didn't actually have a question. I was just wanting to tell you thank you for joining us, and I'm a big fan of your work, and sorry, I did not have a question prepared.
Okay, no problem.
thanks. I appreciate it very much, Brian. And for those that if you get a chance, I am out there a lot. One of the things I'm trying to do is to raise money to help other candidates. We're going to raise money to stay on Tommy Tuberville, but between us C4. And let me mention one other thing that I did not talk about, but I'd like to briefly, if we can, in a little bit of a lull here with Brian's comment and not a question. One of the things I am working on right now is to try to get the word out that a third party effort by either Cornel West or No Labels could be disastrous for Joe Biden. It may not be, but I think it could very well be, because every statistic that I've seen, every poll that I've seen, everything points to the fact that if there is a good third party effort, you want to come say hi?
Sure.
All right. I got my wife who's been packing, and she wants to come
Hey
say,
guys.
yeah, come on in.
Okay. All right.
Say hello.
How you doing?
Hi, sorry
Hello.
we missed you in
Good to see
Barcelona.
you.
Great.
Good to see y'all. We were so sorry we missed you when we were there.
But I told them we're coming back, right?
You're
Yes,
welcome. to come
definitely
back.
going back. We fell in love with it.
In fact,
It's beautiful.
in fact, you guys might help us. We might want to just make a whole Democrats Abroad tour throughout Europe or something like that. That sounds pretty good to us.
That
Okay.
would be great.
All
See y'all.
Ken
Um,
Martin did one of those couples last summer. He visited all around Spain.
So I am really active in this, trying to bring attention to the fact that no labels will take away votes from Joe Biden in critical states. We saw what happened in 2016. Everybody has to understand that. I think that third party candidates cost Hillary Clinton the election. They're certainly there. You can always talk about things that their campaign could have done better and all that. But at the end of the day, those votes didn't go to Hillary Clinton, and they went to somebody else. And we lost that by about 60,000 votes total over 5 states. Joe Biden only won by about 40,000 votes over those same states. So we can't afford to lose any votes. So anything that you guys can do, we've got a group out there called Save Our Republic. Help spread the word with me, Joe Trippi, Dick Gephardt, others. Third Way is doing some good work on this as well, to try to get the word out that this can only benefit Donald Trump and put Donald Trump back in the White House. I still right now believe that Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee. That seems to be where it is headed, which is stunning if you really think about it. Just absolutely stunning that he could be the Republican nominee. More stunning that Republican officials like Brian Kemp of Georgia and others to say, well, I don't support him during the primaries, but I'll vote for him. I'll support him if he's the nominee because Joe Biden is so bad. Oh my God, what world are they living in? But the third party effort is real. It is something that we need to do. So anything that you guys can do over there to try to help amplify the efforts to try to bring everybody's attention to this could be disastrous for us and could be disastrous for democracy, I would sure appreciate it.
100% agree with what you've said. And yes, I'm also very concerned about this no labels group. Like I myself, I'm very left wing. I can't say that I have always agreed with President Biden. Like I voted for him in 2020, but I think as of late he's actually done a lot of really progressive things, like going to the picket line with the United Auto Workers Union. I would honestly say he's probably the most pro-union president we've ever had.
No question.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Brian, I know a lot of folks, Joe Biden Joe Biden governs. He's not an ideologue type president like Trump was. Joe Biden governs, and to govern, you got to do some things and you got to try to reach some consensus. I think Joe Biden, I kind of follow what I call the Mick Jagger rule of politics, philosophy of politics. And that is, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, you just might find you get what you need. And I think Joe is providing a lot of what America needs right now. And he's doing it in a way that I think he's making inroads on things that I never thought we would see made inroads, especially, particularly with unions and particularly with climate. Not as fast as we all would like on climate, but it is making inroads nonetheless.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lisa Berger is up next. Lisa is the chair of vice chair of DA Barcelona.
Yes, hi. Well, it's lovely to meet you, even if it's virtually. We actually had 18 people to see you back then, September 3rd, so it's about the same amount of people here. But it's wonderful to talk with you. And my question is if you would consider running yourself for Senate. That I think Tommy Tuberville couldn't have done a worse job. So it seems like you'd be easy to get in. I'm surprised nobody else has asked that before me here on the queue. So that's
Well,
my simple question.
I was going to ask you when you said run for Senate, I was going to ask you from which state.
Oh.
No, look, I don't rule out anything for 2026. But I got a lot to do between now and then. And Alabama is a tough state. I mean, we've got a long way to go before we really can be competitive. We've got a pretty dysfunctional state party right now. We've tried to make some changes and we're still working on it. You never say never on some things. It's why I'm going up today to speak to a group in Northwest Alabama, which used to be a really strong Democratic Union area and has fallen considerably. But there's for these two counties, there's going to be about 250 people, which was one of the largest gatherings of Democrats at one point that we see. And everywhere I go, people are excited about Democrats in Alabama. It's just that we don't have a party to basically organize them. So we're trying to figure that out a little bit. It's a tough state. I appreciate your comment and your encouragement. Who knows what might happen in the future, but we got a lot of work to do here.
Carl has a question now.
Okay, I guess from my point of view over the last couple of years is it seems as though even though the Democrats are in power, as if the Republicans or the MAGAs keep moving more and more in the direction of statewide passing laws, or shall we say, in the direction of taking away the democracy. And so some examples are like Abbott tried to get a law passed which would enable militias to go to the border and kill Mexicans that are coming across the border, and just turning the bodies over to the state of Texas and no questions asked. Now that's committing murder. Now, question is, what can Democrats do? And there's plenty of other examples. For example, the moms group that are taking over the schools and censoring books. There's a lot of other examples as well. There's the lawyers that it's in the lawyer group that annulled Biden's attempt to help out Black farmers, and by bringing up the fact that this is discrimination against supposedly white farmers who no doubt receive 90% of the government help on crops. And what I'm seeing is what I think I see is it seems like the Republicans are outmaneuvering the Democrats oftentimes. I think Biden's doing a wonderful job. He's just absolutely great.
Right.
But what can be done to address those kinds of issues of DeSantis, and especially DeSantis and Abbott passing laws that are in actuality, the in particular one in Abbott didn't get passed apparently, so that he could basically murder Mexicans. What can be done to stop these on the federal level? Can we pass laws to keep that from happening?
We can't pass them with a House-controlled Congress. The House of Representatives controlled by Republicans that really is in control of the MAGA faction of the Republican Party. But you really raise important questions, Carl, because what happened, and if you go back and look, this has been 30 years in the making. This just didn't happen overnight. This happened over 30 years when Republicans had the foresight to look ahead and play long ball, and Democrats. I got to tell you, Democrats we barely can see past the next election, much less 10, 20 years from now. And that's what happened. They started doing things at a local level with state school boards and city council races, county commission races, tax collector races, all of those things, really putting in an effort and building up a bench and an infrastructure that Democrats ignored. I mean, we just ignored what was going on for so long. And so then in 2010, and there's a really good, for those of you who follow Heather Cox Richardson, Letters from an American, her letter today sets all of this out in an incredibly historical, factual basis, that in 2010, there was an effort for gerrymandering the districts, congressional districts, state legislatures. And it put folks in the very kind of control that I was talking about at the beginning, that we're trying to break the cycle of with this Alabama case. We're going to have to play long ball. We're going to have to start getting back to those local level races and start putting people in and finding folks and convincing them to do what Doug Jones did in 2017 and put your neck out there. You may or may not win this race, but we got to start putting good candidates out there and giving them the support, not just financial support, but organizing support to try to make a difference and let those voices get out there. The other thing I think that we've got to do over here, and this is the message I'm giving to the Shoals Democrats tonight, we got to start inviting other people to some of our events and to have conversations with them. We can't just preach to the same choir every time we do something. We need to have some town halls. We need to get out there and talk about issues that people care about. We got to go where they are and understand that you can find some common ground on a lot of things. But right now, these groups, if you think about it, the reason that Alabama, Texas, and these states can get away with the kind of things they're getting away with is because of gerrymandered districts in their state legislature. They only have to speak to a small percentage of the most extreme voters in a primary, and then they're gold. They're gold. They're going to get elected in November. And so that has been a huge, huge problem. If we could have only convinced a couple of senators to change the rules regarding the filibuster and pass the Freedom to Vote Act, we could have, I think, made considerable progress toward doing away with political gerrymandering and getting to some things. But the main thing is that we got to stand up and we got to speak out. We got to rise up, but we got to talk to people too. And more importantly, we need to listen to them. We need to listen to the fears that they have about inflation and rising gas prices. We need to listen to the fears that they have, whether they're justified or not, about what's being taught in schools, and talk to them and explain to them that we're trying to broaden the education of people, not trying to limit it. We need to make sure that people understand that we're going to repeat the same mistakes of history if we all of a sudden take out the mistakes of history and we don't even know they existed. This is something that we've got to do. The good thing, Carl, I believe, I say it's a good thing. It's really not a good thing. But for Democrats, I really believe Republicans are overplaying their hand. I think what DeSantis is doing, you're seeing Ron DeSantis was going to be the next nominee. He was going to be the post-Trump Republican whose policies in Florida are as bad, if not worse, than some of what Trump wants to do if he gets reelected. He is faltering. He's done. He is absolutely done, I believe, as a nominee. And there was an article the other day about how he is losing so much support in Florida now that he's no longer the golden child. He's losing support among Republicans in Florida. And I think they're overplaying their hand in a big, big way. And I think a lot of this is going to backfire. We've just got to be very process oriented. We've got to be methodical about it. We can't get too anxious about it in the sense of overreacting immediately and not being able to have a process to know that where we're going and to stick to that course a good bit. I'm actually fairly hopeful if we can just keep the no labels and people like that from electing Donald Trump. I think we're going to be in much better shape. I think if we can reject Trump and all of that he stands for this time, I think there's going to be a faction of people that are not going to like it. Hell, Mike Huckabee the other day, Huckabee said that the next election, if Donald Trump's not elected, the election after that's going to be decided by guns. We need to make sure people like that have no microphone. We do that, I think, with bringing people in who are your next door neighbor who is not like that, who doesn't want to see guns used in elections. So it's a long way to go, and you raise great points. Bottom line is we've been asleep at the switch, but we've been, I don't want to say woke, I guess, but we're woke up to it. We have everything. Our consciousness has been aroused to what's happening to our democracy.
Well, the root cause of all of this, of course, is just the 24/7 propaganda by Fox News,
Yeah.
Newsmax, and all of the other sources that, and there's doesn't seem to be any way to do anything about that or control that, because if you do, then everybody screams, freedom of the press or whatever, freedom of speech. But one other thing that I worry about too are MAGAs that are still within in important positions within the government. For example, DeJoy, and I worry that DeJoy, when it comes around to the next votes in 2024, if he's still in his position, where at one point he said, we're gonna take out all the votes and expedite them, take out everybody who's voting by mail and expedite it. I don't like the idea of him being in charge of expediting votes, so I mean, he can say, okay, well, we got a Democratic district here, well, they'll expedite these to the trash can.
Yeah.
So I'm a little disappointed that he wasn't replaced. And I know I've read things for, say, Newsweek, but you don't know who writes the things. Now we have actually Fox News trolls writing for Washington Post and New York Times, which really bothers me. I tried to write an op-ed about that, and I never could get it published, and I kind of sent it to 6 or 7 newspapers about one particular one. So I'm long and the short of it is I'm very worried.
Yes,
That's all I can say.
I am too, for all the reasons that you articulated. So thank you.
Senator, we're just about at the half hour. Do you have time for one more question?
Yeah, we can do one more.
Okay, Andrew, please keep it short because we're really running out of
Yep.
time.
No, understood. Thank you very much, Senator. Good to hear you. Followed your kind of career, so I appreciate that. Real quick question. Everybody's talking about kind of circling the wagon. Let's talk about 2024. Let's talk about the worst case. He gets elected. He's put in power. What happens? What's your thoughts?
It's not going to be good. Look, they're telling people what they're going to do. It's not what I think will happen. It's what they're telling people they're going to do. They're going to start firing people that are civil servants, that are career people, and start putting in political hacks. They're going to do all of that. They're going to do everything that Joe Biden has done by executive order to the extent that they can do it. They are going to completely upend the government as we have known it for a long time. There are articles being published right now. There are groups out there, the Heritage Foundation and others, that are literally publishing what can happen. And we need to take them at their word that this is going to happen. It is going to roll back civil rights. It's going to roll back rights for LGBTQ individuals. It's going to roll back rights. It's going to put another Muslim ban on. They're going to do things for seniors. They're going to try to privatize Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, the whole 9 yards. It's out there. It's out there. I don't have to speculate. And the question is whether or not we will let it happen. And there is a whole litany of things that I think Trump will do, including the fact that he will immediately start to try to figure out a way to get reelected again and again and again. This is someone whose heroes in the world are the Vladimir Putins and President Xi in China, and his pen pal Kim Jong-un in North Korea. It's a scary proposition.
Well, Senator, excuse me, but how do we turn that into a message that we can use overseas? Because you heard before, we have a lot of Americans, almost 9 million, I think, as stated earlier, where a lot of them are disconnected. They're really not going to vote. And the reason why they're not voting is because they're tired of hearing what's happening now. But how do we message that with your thoughts into something we can use to leverage a higher number of voters out there for next year?
Well, I realize that they're not connected, but or at least they think they're not connected. But if people in Europe think that they're not connected, that what happens in Europe is not connected to what happens in America, then they're living in Never Land somehow. You only have to look at how close we came to disbanding NATO, and what will happen if Donald Trump pulls out of NATO, and that will happen. That is, he has said that will happen. Then everybody is going to fend for themselves, and there is no telling what will happen. We'll have a green light to not only North Korea, China, and Russia, but also to Iran and others that are nefarious actors out there. The security of Europe depends on the security of the United States. And we've got to make sure people understand that while they are not here, everything that happens here is connected there in Europe. And if we lose this democracy, then no one is safe anywhere in the world that believes in a democracy, that believes in what America has stood for so long. That's what's at stake at in this next election. And getting through to folks to that may be difficult. As I said a minute ago, just like I have to go to some people where they are in Alabama that I don't particularly like to go where they are, I have to talk to them. We got to go where people are there to make sure that they connect and that they understand that their vote does count. It does matter. And every vote is critical as we go forward. Okay.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. It's a kind of a scary note to end on, but I think it's a really important message that we need to share with our fellow Americans abroad. So thank you.
Well, thank you all for having me. I look forward to sometime being able to get back over there. But I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. I'm easy to find. Follow us on, follow me on at the Right Side of History PAC, or follow me on Twitter or whatever. Help amplify some of the things that we're talking about here. We really just got to get the message. Thanks for all of you guys for what you do over there to try to get people out to vote and to make sure they know and to make a difference. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Senator.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
All right.
Good luck up in Shoals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annie, for organizing this.